of being abducted and having experiences through my life, even though I didn't always have like actual experience, like remembering being in any like experiments or anything of that nature. And I was getting really fearful, and because of those things that were happening more and more regularly, he told me to try to put it out of my mind.
What happened to all these people that were part of your life? The friends, the boyfriend, all of them?
I separated myself, and
probably smart.
Yes, the boyfriend was actually from here, and we had moved together, and he is back here, and I had talked to a mutual friend stating that I thought that he was reptilian, and she said that made sense, and she also could see that.
I'm in St. Louis right now. I've got to find this reptilian guy. You may be the only reptilian that I've ever seen.
He's quite something, but I've been nervous because every time I speak about him to somebody, he pops up in my life. Like I've run into him at a random location, or
never violent or anything like that.
No, just he would strike fear in me, but more it's just like an emotional.
Yeah, he never hit you physically.
Emotional part. No, I don't think he felt like he needed to. He always, and my mom could see it and felt that he was, not just that he was like a bad person or anything, but she felt that he was like pure evil or dark or, the way he would try to manipulate.
Well, two things. One, it seems like you are attracting these entities, I think. And the other thing is that you were very smart to separate yourself from these people. Let's go east of the Rockies. Ryan in Chicago, you're up with us on Coast to Coast. Thanks for holding, Ryan.
Hey, Georgie, no problem.
Going to be in Chicago this weekend. They tell me it's getting cold.
You know what? I woke up this morning for class, and it was nearly about 60, so I left with just a hooded sweatshirt on. I leave class at around 8 o'clock, and it's freezing. I can see my breath, and I'm shaking the whole way to the car.
No, it's going to happen. I mean, I'm there for the Radio Hall of Fame. I'm going to do my show Friday. Yeah.
Yeah, I keep on hearing ads about it on 890, but sadly they cut back our we only get you for 2 hours here, so I got to stream you online.
That's only going to be short term, I hear.
That's what I hope, because I sent them a few emails.
Good.
All right. Well, I got a couple things, if that's okay.
Yep.
The first thing I want to preface, I think for programming, I think it would do a lot of good if you'd read some poetry, George.
Me?
Once in a while. Yes, I think you can pick
poetry?
Contemporary poets and read it to the people, because I think poetry is an unappreciated art in our.
Oh, I agree with you, but I'm not sure I'm the one to read it. Maybe I get Lionel Fanthorpe to do it.
I think you can get anybody. I think it would help a lot.
My favorite poem, though, is Robert Frost's "A Road Not Taken."
That is a great poem.
I love it.
All right.
Poetry, huh? All right.
Yeah, it's a great thing. All right. So now my story for you.
All right.
I'm just outside near the Tinley Park, so I was right by the red lights. I actually had friends who saw them. I think it was on the UFO Hunter special.
Yes. Okay.
Now, I had my own personal UFO story, and I'm just like you. I'm always looking up near the sky, always looking around, never got to see anything. And about 4 years ago, I'm coming home from my dad's house, and I'm heading eastbound on a small suburban street right near my house. And I'm always keeping my head up looking towards the sky. And I see these three lights in a triangle right as I'm coming up to a stop sign. And I'm thinking, what is this? And it is an equilateral triangle. And these 3 points, they're staying in the perfect triangle, but they're rotating around a center point. And this triangle's rotating, and it's also moving from left to right, then down a little bit. Now, I'm stopped in my car. And I'm just staring at it at this stoplight. And I know there's somebody behind me waiting, but I'm just staring at it. And it's there for about maybe 20 seconds, and then it just shoots away.
It's everywhere. They're there. They're there.
It blew my mind away.
You know, I saw 2 UFOs with Ed Grimsley with his night vision goggles, Ryan. And, you know, I at least consider myself, whatever I saw was unidentified, as weird as it was, 90-degree angles and everything else. So I can imagine what you went through when you spotted that. We've got David in Crawford, Colorado, west of the Rockies. Hey, David, go ahead.
Hi, George.
What's going on out there?
Oh, it's nice and sunny today.
Good.
Yeah. I got a bunch of stuff. Before I get off the phone, I'd like to come back to June Vallo, September. You had him on?
Yeah.
Okay, but before I get to that, I'd like to thank you folks for bringing us closer to the truth.
Well, that's what we're here for. You know, we may step on some toes along the way, but that's what we want. We want the truth.
Yeah, sometimes things have to hurt.
Yep.
You know, I got a question that I wanted to ask John, is that how come some of us are being implanted? And that, because I think that when I was 5 years old in 57, I got implanted through the roof of my mouth. And as I got older, there was a lump that grew on the base of my skull, on my spine.
Jeez.
And it took about 20 years for that lump to travel down my neck and to the bottom right side of my shoulder. And about 6 years ago, the VA removed it. It took 3 months for my scheduled appointment to show up. So they scheduled me, and then it took 3 months.
And you were able to track its movement through your body.
It took over 20 years. I could feel it, you know.
Holy.
And I'll tell you what happened at the VA. This was done at Triple Army Hospital. The doctor that was supposed to do my surgery, I came in, the nurse was there, and he looked like a Navy retired doctor working for Tripler, old sailor type, you know.
Yeah.
And he told me, well, I'm not going to do the surgery. Another doctor's coming in. He's going to do the surgery. And as soon as he got done laying me on the table, this guy walks in, looked like he was living in a cave on the ground. Pale white, you know. This is Triple Army Hospital. The guy should have had at least a little bit of a tan. It's like almost they flew him directly to Tripler to have that thing removed from my neck and then fly out with it.
That's weird.
I tell you, advice for someone who's going to have that procedure done, that little lump that they take out belongs to you. You can have the doctor slice that thing open and see what's inside. And if there's a hard-packed element in there, you should take it and keep it with you, because I think...
Now, did you do that, or did they keep it?
That's where I kind of kicked myself, because I could have had them... I could have requested them to do that. My suspicion is that they're taking this technology and using it against our friends, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Who do they make friends with? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really scary what's going on. I don't trust people anymore. And my question to you would be, if something hits the fan, George, are you still going to broadcast?
Absolutely.
And in what band?
Absolutely.
What band?
I'll still be on AM and FM. I have to be.
If the grid goes out, how are you going to do that?
If the grid goes out, we got a problem.
Okay. So no shortwave, nothing, huh?
No, not at this point.
No ham radio, nothing of that.
Well, we might want to think about that as a backup.
Yeah, okay. Well, you know, it's like I wrote a bunch of things down when John was on, but I wanted to hear him, so I didn't call. Most important things are being hidden from us, you know, and somebody knows what they are.
And what did you want to ask me about June Vallo?
Oh, you know, real quick, supposing the Bible times are right, and 26,000 years ago, June Vallo talked about when this event takes place, there's going to be a window of time where we're going to lose our memory.
Yep.
So going back in the Bible, let's say the Bible is incorrect in its measurement and measure of time, and say it was 26,000 years ago, which is that span of time when the galaxy lines up, right? And then he said that we're going to lose, when the poles shift, we're going to lose our memory. Don't you think that's possibly what happened at the Tower of Babel?
Well, something similar could have happened like that, David. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of the stories that are in the Bible had true significance. They happened, and there were reasons for it, whether it was scientific or supernatural, but they happened. Noah's Ark happened, Tower of Babel happened, all that. Let's go to Corpus Christi, Texas. Mike is there. Hey, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, George. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure thing.
This happened back in 1981. I was a police officer, and it was a hot summer night. About 2 in the morning, I got a call for someone passed out at a city park, passed out in a small pickup truck. I get there, and it's a dark park off the side of the road, way deep in there. I get there, and the guy's sitting in his truck, head tilted back, the windows rolled down, doors unlocked, and, you know, I can hear him snoring, his shirt's unbuttoned. And I've done it before, and you normally wind up opening the door and giving them the Mr. Spock Vulcan pinch to the collarbone. You know, I had already done it several times. So I walked up there, told the dispatcher I was there. I walked up, and my hand was on the door handle. And I don't know what it was, but something made me stop. And I looked a little closer, and I looked down in his lap, and his right hand was laying on his lap, and he was holding a short-barrel .38 revolver.
Oh. Do you think he was going to try to commit suicide, or he was doing this just to come after somebody?
Well, I didn't know. I didn't want to wake him up to ask him.
No.
But anyway, I processed all that through my mind, and I said, well, I got to get the gun. So, you know, there was no cover back in those days. Your cover was hanging on your waist.
Yeah.
And so I just pulled my revolver out, put it behind his head, put a little pressure on the trigger, and then just slowly reached down with my left hand, got a hold of that gun, and gently took it out.
And he was still snoring away.
Just still snoring away. But, you know, I secured his gun. I put mine away. And I woke him up, and I gave him the Mr. Spock, you know, treatment.
Yeah, yeah.
And when he woke up, he fought me. So
You mean physically?
Oh, yeah, he resisted arrest.
Ah.
So if I had woke him up, you know, by opening the door,
he would have tried to shoot you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was he drunk?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could smell the beer when I walked up to the car.
Unbelievable.
But,
what a tough job. Man, have you ever been shot at, Michael?
No. Not that I know of. I went to a shooting one time, and I heard a shot, and it did hit my car. But I don't know if it was aimed at me or if they were, you know, there was two idiots shooting at each other from about 5 houses apart.
Like the Wild West.
I drove right by them because the whole street was dark, and I went up to the end of the street where a creek was, and I was turning around when one shot hit the back end of my patrol car. But I did that for about 8 years and decided to do something else.
All right, great. Now, you take care of yourself, Mike.
Thanks, George.
Did you ever, speaking of poems, did you ever hear the poem Dangerous Dan McGrew? Go online and search for it. That's one bizarre story. Let's go to Bakersfield. It's Rhea on Coast to Coast. Rhea, I got a little time for you before the break. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm one of these new enlightened people that I've been labeled as a bipolar person, and I finally found the root to that problem where I descend from reptilian people, but somehow the light people got a hold of me. And I think that's what causes these bipolar people in the world, where they're looking at dark and light and they're confused. It's like when you have an episode, I call it, it's usually when one of these entities or the other is like fighting within itself. And I tried doing the medication route, traditional medicine, for like 10 years.
It didn't work for you, did it?
Absolutely not. I felt like I was dying. It's destroyed my body. I finally found a New Age healer, and I feel better. I mean, I feel like I'm back in control. I'm less negative.
Good.
I mean,
Do you,
it's like a
you still
miracle.
have a few bouts of ups and downs? Okay.
Yeah, because this has been a new thing for me. And I wrote a poem, if I could read it really quick.
How long is that? I got a minute left.
Real short. It's called The New World Order. As I dissolve back to Mother, my breath becomes the wind, my body the earth, my soul the lightning, and my tears fill the rivers. There are too many people now. All the air is polluted. The wind is confused, and so am I. It tries to balance, but man keeps digging even bigger holes in the earth, converting the water to sludge as the forest burns, the earth shakes. She is ready to turn over new sod. This will be the new world in order. And when I wrote this poem, I had a vision of a curlicue, a sun sign, and a meteor star. And I wrote those on the paper. And I did this poem back in 2002. And it's just been since this week, you know, this Halloween, it's like my eyes have been open and I'm hearing, you know, I hear the ringing, I have in my ears. You can feel the earth shake a little bit. It's real. I believe it's real.
Something's happening, Rhea. People can feel it, too. You're absolutely right. I'll be back in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM with final open line calls this full moon night on Coast to Coast AM. Well, if you're into conspiracies, you're going to love our next Coast to Coast program with Craig Hewlett, the Hydra of Carnage, where he believes the biggest ripoff in galactic history is happening right now. You don't want to miss that portion of Coast to Coast AM. Can you believe it's November 3rd already, this being Tuesday morning now? Unbelievable. The clock just keeps ticking. Let's go to Cleveland, Ohio. Ken, thank you, Ken, for holding. You're up.
Yes, I got a question, but first I want a brief little story when I was younger.
Okay.
Back in the late 70s when I was like 7 or 8 years old. I'm 36 now. I remember it was a phenomenon that hit Cleveland that one day. It was called ball lightning. You ever hear of that?
I sure have, absolutely.
I remember I lived in a double house. My parents owned it downstairs. My grandparents lived upstairs, and we was upstairs. And I remember seeing this ball lightning come in my grandmother's dining room and just hover there for like a second and just shoot through the floor. And it went down in a fried dryer of ours in the basement.
It is weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it was weird because it was all over the local news stations at the time. But the question I want to ask is, I heard a rumor that sometime between now and possibly before Christmas, the Obama administration is supposed to come public and say, hey, welcome, I want to introduce you to my friend Joe Alien, and introduce that we've been mingling with aliens. Have you heard anything about that?
We had a guest on a few weeks ago by the name of David Wilcock who said that his sources have told him that is absolutely the case. I don't know. That sounds pretty far-fetched to me. But you know what? Stranger things have happened. He said it's going to be an international news conference, and the president's going to be flanked with these extraterrestrials by his side.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Okay. I know it.
Okay. Well, thank you. First-time caller, been listening since Art Bell, so thank you very much, George.
Thank you, Ken. You've been with us a long time. Let's go to Seattle, Washington now. Hey, Ross, welcome to the program.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay,
long-time
Ross.
Listener, first-time caller.
Great, thanks. Cold up there yet?
Yeah. It's getting there. It's
coming.
Warm this week. I have a story a friend of mine told me. Back in Russia, when he was 10 years old, him and his friends found an abandoned house, and they, decided to have a chilling place there, I guess. They've been there a couple times before, and one day, he decided to meet up with them there. So he came, and it was a 2-story house, and there was an attic, and there was a ladder. So he was climbing up the ladder, and he's calling his friend's name, and there was no answer. So he's climbing up, and then he gets on his hands to push himself up to get on the attic. And as he looks down and he looks up, he puts his head up, and he sees this, I would say, a man with a goat head with red eyes, just kneeling down, and his fingers were like old man's fingers, like crooked. And my friend looked at him, and the goat man, whatever it was, looked back at him, and then like about maybe 20 seconds or something, they were looking at each other, and the goat thing just kind of did a backflip and jumped out I think it was like a wooden door or something, and he was so terrified he just dropped down from, I guess, like second floor, just fell on his back, got in his mope, and just got out of there.
Almost sounds like the Grim Reaper, except he was in white.
No, he wasn't white. It was just he remembers that he was kneeling down, so it was like a body of a man, but it was a goat head and red eyes. And after that, he had nightmares. He would wet his bed, and it's like the goat man would follow him in his dreams. That's what was happening, like for 2 years after that.
Ancient myths, Roths, talk about goat-headed people, very strange creatures, indeed. Next up, we go to Monroe, Louisiana, east of the Rockies. Hey, Ricky, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for bringing me on.
Sure.
I have this bizarre theory about Roswell that nobody's ever really
All right. What
really
is that?
touched on. All right. during World War II, the B-29s discovered the jet stream, and the Japanese launched balloons with warheads on the bombs and sent them through the jet stream, and several did. In fact, I think a family was out in the wilderness, and they came across one.
That's
and
true.
It blew up on them. All right. It seems to me that using the jet stream with a balloon, a really good one, would be an excellent way to go over Russia for surveillance and or deploying a warhead. It wouldn't have to be as big as the ones used at Hiroshima, but it could be a warhead indeed. But they wouldn't have to be able to use full-grown humans. They'd have to use, little humans. I mean, dwarfs, small people, not children. And it's possible that at Roswell they were testing that premise, and they got hit by lightning or something, and it came down, and that cover story just seemed to work really well because they didn't want the Russians to know that we were going to use balloons to actually deploy a warhead. And it would have been very easy to do if they could have worked out the details. What do y'all think?
Well, that's very possible. I had a guest on years ago who talked about the possibility that those what we thought were alien bodies were really Japanese people who were arrested during the war, kept in camps in this country, and that they were using them to experiment with these kinds of balloons. That's a distinct possibility. The problem is there's so many eyewitnesses who have either told their children, they've passed on now, these incredible, compelling stories of what they saw, with the craft and everything else. It's bizarre. We may never get to the full truth on Roswell, but
that is a plausible.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I've been very curious about that. Why it's never been brought up that the Japanese were successful, and I don't know how many balloons they got across here and how many were actually used and exploded, but I do know about that one family that found it, and so they were trying that. And it seems like the military would say, "Wow, that is a good idea."
Well, it's possible, if they launched it, let's say in 45, and Roswell is in 47, it could have been there for a couple of years, crashed.
Right. That's exactly what I've been thinking. It could have been one of the Japanese balloons that just had been there for ages, and nobody had noticed.
And one of the reasons I kept it so secret here in this country is because they didn't want everyone to panic.
Good plan.
Yeah. Good plan. Good theory, Ricky.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's go to Charlie in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Hey, Charlie, go ahead.
Hey, buddy. I'm 60 years old, 62. About 25 years ago, I was babysitting, you might say, or house-sitting my brother-in-law's house. We were upstairs in the king-size bed, my wife and I. About 3 o'clock in the morning, something woke me up, and at the end of the bed, I saw a man in a pea coat, and I don't know what you call it, just a...
like a Navy pea coat?
Yeah, Navy pea coat, and then the hat, and he had a meat cleaver in his hand, and I could see through the light that it was kind of chrome, and he was coming around the end of the bed.
Whoa!
And I'm not the type to be scared, but he come around the end of the bed, came up, and was going to chop down. And about that time, I said, I saw it in the newspaper, my wife and I, or, on the front page, dead. And I swung with my arm. I always wondered what I would do. I swung with my arm, thought it was going to hit my arm, and it disappeared. And I was fully awake. And I couldn't talk for about 5 or 10 minutes, and finally got up and washed my face, and got around where I could talk and told her about it. And it was the scariest I've ever been in my life.
Charlie, it's bad enough to wake up with somebody in your room. It's worse when they've got a meat cleaver in their hand.
Well, right. And I don't watch those kind of movies. I'm not into that. Never happened before. And I always wondered if anything, it was kind of a new house, and I always wondered if anything happened around that area. And I don't even really believe in that stuff. But I saw it well enough to see the hat, the big coat, the knife. And I always wanted to ask you, after 20 years, 15 years, the jet or the explosion that you guys have that don't seem to go with the style of show that you have. You know, you're sitting there in the middle of the night listening to all this stuff, and you always have that lead off there where you have the jet taking off. What?
No, I'm a little confused. What jet?
Well, it's like an explosion or whatever. Those.
Oh, you mean coming out of a commercial?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a mechanism to allow our joining affiliates. We're on 528 radio stations.
Yeah, I always wanted.
So between the commercial and me, some of them put like little 5-second or 10-second voice promos and things like that. So that's a separation.
I know. I always hear it, and I always think of all things to hear it, 3, 4, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And one small little thing, if I could just bring it up for a tidbit, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I faxed Art Bell a pillow that I could plug in like you guys have now. It's called the Sleep Pillow. I call it the Dreamland Pillow, where I wouldn't disturb my wife because
all right.
And then like 10 years later, you guys come up with it, and I thought it was pretty good. And I never heard anything back from the fax, but I said, "Well, I'll be darned." I even went to the radio station down here and told them about it. I said, "I got an invention here that's going to be good," and I thought that was pretty good.
The old pillow speakers, Charlie. Hey, thanks for the call. And when you said that, you heard a jet. There was a radio host years ago in Detroit whose late-night talk show was based on people getting on a plane with him. It was all sound effects. And they would take off, and off they'd go. And they would do their thing, and he would do his show, and then he'd land again. But the entire program was you getting on a plane with him, and it was taking off. For one split second, I thought maybe that's what you were talking about. Olivehurst, California, we go. Hello, Lawrence. You're up with us on Coast to Coast.
Howdy.
Hey.
I like to talk about something that happened to me back when I was 15, back in the late part of the 60s. I was taking care of my brothers, and I got 5 of them. That I must have fallen asleep sometime in the late part of the evening, and about 2 in the morning, I woke up knowing that there was somebody else in the house other than myself and my brothers for some reason.
Oh, that's what you felt, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I knew it wasn't my parents because my mother and my dad would always announce themselves once they come in through the door. But I went into the kitchen. I was sitting in the living room at the time. Went into the kitchen and grabbed up my favorite weapons, the meat cleavers. And
another meat cleaver story.
Yeah, well, I was fairly able to throw those things pretty easily.
Don't tell me you were wearing a pea coat, though.
No. That I went around into my brother's room. There was 4 of them sleeping on bunk beds in their room, and didn't see it, but I had that feeling that it must have been whatever it was underneath the bed. So I reached with one hand underneath the bed with one of the meat cleavers, and I was down on my knees and slept underneath there, and then something at the foot of the bed jumped up. And
what was it?
I'm not really sure.
Was it physical?
It was physical. It was enough to where when it raced behind me, I couldn't jump up hard enough. Now I stand almost 6 foot, and it was as tall as I was standing on my knees.
That's weird.
And it headed on down the hallway to the back door of the house. And as I raced behind it, which I was probably about 8 feet behind it, the strangest thing that happened was that the back door opened up on its own, and the screen door opened along with it. And as it was going out through the back door, I let loose my meat cleavers, and I raced out through the door, found the meat cleavers embedded in the fence, which was almost 15 feet from the back door, but I didn't find anything.
Oh, but you saw this thing physically go out the door.
Yeah.
Even though the doors opened up by themselves. You saw. What did it look like? Did it look human?
Yeah, human shaped, but it was just a dark figure, even though the house was all lit up.
You think someone was trying to rob the place and was just suited up in dark clothes?
No, it wasn't dark clothes. It just it didn't even seem like it had clothes on. But about 2 years later, something similar like that happened again. I was standing in the hallway talking to my mother at her bedroom door, and something reached up and placed its hand onto my shoulder. And I thought, I said to my mom, "It's Michael. He's trying to fool me again." And I reached to grab it, and
nothing. Right?
Well, it disappeared as I was running down, chasing whatever it was. It was the same thing again.
And why was it running away from you? Why would an entity want to run away?
I don't really know. Maybe he didn't want to get a hold of me because I was a fairly big bruiser at the time.
Yeah, but if it was just an entity, if they turn around and scare you, that's a strange story. We might have time to squeeze in. Jonathan, I've got a minute and a half for you. Go ahead.
George, you got the Talk Radio Hall of Fame coming up this week, right?
Yeah, in Chicago. Absolutely.
Just real quick, I don't know if y'all Coast to Coast have ever considered this idea, but I think Coast to Coast AM is ready for prime time, George. I mean, maybe a daytime market. I think I know you might disagree with this, and I don't know if you'd consider it, but maybe a test market to try it out in the daytime. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that love to listen to this show, this type of programming during the day that just can't stay up all night.
Well, that's true. One of the reasons and I'll tell you what my St. Louis affiliate is doing now, but, of course, through podcasting, for example, you just plug it into your computer, and in the morning the entire show's waiting for you, and you can listen to it that way as too. But, you might be right. Coast to Coast is a nighttime show. It's the number 1 rated show in the world at night, and we would never want to change that. But I think it could probably work with a few little alterations during the daytime as well. Here in St. Louis, KTRS is now running the previous night's show early from 9 to midnight, and then they pick up the live show, tonight's show, for example, at midnight Central Time. So it's on. So it's kind of ironic because I'm back in my old time slot when I was doing my local show there as the Nighthawk right here. Well, stick with us. We've got a great week of programs for you. And Friday night, I'll be live in Chicago hosting the National Radio Hall of Fame Awards on Saturday. But we'll be doing our show Friday night out of WLS's studios in Chicago. For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladesseur, Ross Mitchell, George Knapp, Ian Punnett, and Art Bell, I'm George Norrie. Somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe.